Captain Elias Voss stood at the edge of the Terran diplomatic ship, staring at the swirling blue and green planet below. Velmera 9, a world known for its hostile warrior caste, its secrecy, and its refusal to negotiate with humanity. Until now. His orders were clear. Land alone, meet the Velmeri princess, and discuss a potential alliance. No backup, no weapons, no margin for error. The message from the Velmeri Empire had been strange. It didn't come from their ruling warrior caste, but from their royal family, a group humanity knew little about. Even stranger, the message was urgent. The princess wanted to meet in secret. Voss was no politician, but he knew how to handle dangerous situations. He had fought in the first contact wars against the Tithan Swarm, led ground forces against the cybernetic Tirath, and survived assassination attempts from rogue factions. If the Velmeri thought they could intimidate him, they were in for a surprise. His shuttle entered the planet's atmosphere, cutting through thick clouds. Below, dense jungles stretched endlessly, broken only by jagged mountain peaks, and a massive golden palace, half hidden in the mist. This better not be a trap, Voss muttered as he landed in a clearing outside the palace. Two Velmeri guards in dark, spiked armor approached. Unlike humans, the Velmeri were tall, lean, and eerily graceful, with 4 glowing eyes and skin that shimmered in the sunlight. The guards said nothing, only gestured for him to follow. Voss walked through long corridors filled with floating crystal lights and strange alien murals. The palace felt ancient, but beneath its beauty, something felt wrong. There were no other servants, no signs of life. It was as if the entire palace had been emptied. The guard stopped at a massive golden door, then turned and walked away without a word. Voss pushed the door open and stepped inside. And then he saw her. Princess Alraya Velmera stood at the far end of the chamber, her back turned to him. Her ceremonial armor, designed to cover her body in elegant golden plates, was malfunctioning. Parts of it had retracted, revealing soft, glowing blue skin, delicate markings along her spine pulsing with faint energy. She turned sharply, eyes wide with shock and horror. You weren't supposed to see this," she whispered, stepping back. Voss raised an eyebrow. "See what?" Her hands clenched, her breathing quickened. For the first time, Voss noticed fear in her alien eyes. Not fear of him, but fear of what might happen now that her secret was exposed. Before he could ask another question, a distant explosion shook the palace. Alraya's expression changed instantly. "They've come to kill us both," she said. Voss instinctively reached for a weapon that wasn't there. "Who?" he demanded. "The real rulers of Velmera," she whispered. "And if we don't escape right now, we're already dead." Voss didn't hesitate. He had been in enough battles to know that when someone said, "They're coming to kill us," they weren't exaggerating. A second explosion rocked the palace, shaking the golden walls. Somewhere outside, the sound of metal boots echoed through the corridors. Alraya's hands trembled, but she forced herself to move. She ran to a hidden panel near the wall and pressed her palm against it. A section of the floor slid open, revealing a narrow escape tunnel. "This way," she urged. Voss didn't argue. He followed her, stepping inside just as the golden doors behind them burst open. Through the narrowing gap, he caught a glimpse of tall figures in black armor, their glowing red visors scanning the room. They weren't ordinary soldiers. Their movements were too precise, too fast. "Assassins," Voss muttered. The door sealed shut just as energy blasts struck where they had been standing. Alraya moved quickly through the tunnel, her bioluminescent markings lighting the way. "We have to reach the lower chambers. There's a secret exit through the jungle." Voss kept pace beside her. "Who are those people?" She hesitated before answering. "The Imperial Guard. They are not here to protect me. They serve only the warrior caste." Voss frowned. He had studied Velmeri politics before coming here. The warrior caste was supposed to be the ruling class, proud, powerful, and unchallenged. But if their own princess feared them, something was very wrong. "They don't want peace with humans, do they?" he asked. Alraya shook her head. "No, they want war." Before he could ask more, the tunnel shook violently. The assassins were using breaching charges to break through. "Faster," Alraya urged. They reached a circular chamber with a single platform in the center. Alraya pressed a hidden switch, and the floor began to descend like an elevator. As they sank lower into the palace, Voss finally spoke. "If you knew they would try to kill you, why did you call me here?" Alraya met his gaze, her 4 eyes filled with something between desperation and determination. "Because I had no choice. If I stayed silent, millions would die." Voss folded his arms. "I need more than that, Princess." She exhaled sharply. "The warrior caste is lying to my people. They have been for centuries. They claim to be our strongest warriors, the rightful rulers, but they are hiding a terrible secret." Voss narrowed his eyes. "What secret?" Before she could answer, a loud metallic screech filled the chamber. Looking up, Voss saw the assassins cutting through the tunnel ceiling with plasma blades. Alraya gasped. "They're too fast." Voss pulled her behind him, eyes scanning the walls. He didn't have a weapon, but he still had his mind. And if there was one thing humans did better than any species in the galaxy, it was survive against impossible odds. The battle was about to begin. The plasma blades cut deeper, sending sparks raining down as the assassins forced their way through. Voss had seen elite killers before, but these weren't ordinary soldiers. Their movements were precise, coldly efficient, like they had done this 1,000 times before. He turned to Alraya. "Tell me there's another way out." She shook her head, panic flashing across her face. "This is the only way down. We're trapped." Voss clenched his fists. He hated being unarmed, but he wasn't defenseless. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy, a reputation for being unpredictable, for surviving when no one else could. The moment the first assassin dropped down, Voss moved. He lunged forward, slamming his fist into the assassin's visor before the enemy could react. The warrior staggered back, momentarily stunned, but another dropped down behind him. Voss ducked just in time, avoiding a razor-sharp blade aimed at his neck. He twisted, grabbed the assassin's wrist, and used his human strength and leverage to flip the attacker over. Alraya watched in shock. "You're fighting them, with your bare hands." "Unless you have a better idea, Princess," Voss grunted, sidestepping another attack. Alraya hesitated, then closed her eyes. The markings on her skin glowed brighter, pulsing with strange energy. The air shifted, and suddenly the assassin closest to her froze in place, his weapon still raised. Voss blinked. "What the hell did you just do?" Alraya opened her eyes, breathing heavily. "A telepathic disruption. I can't control minds, but I can interrupt them." Voss didn't waste time asking questions. He grabbed the frozen assassin's weapon and fired at the remaining attackers. The energy blast hit one directly in the chest, sending him crashing into the wall. The others hesitated, just long enough for Voss to activate the elevator again. As the platform continued to descend, Alraya collapsed against the wall, exhausted. "I can't hold them like that again. It takes too much energy." Voss knelt beside her. "You never said the Velmeri had telepathic abilities." She hesitated. "Because the warrior caste doesn't." Voss frowned. "Then why do you?" She took a deep breath, looking away. "Because I'm not like them. The Velmeri royal family. We were never meant to be warriors." Voss's mind raced. The warrior caste had ruled the Velmeri for centuries, claiming to be their strongest and most advanced. But now, the princess of their empire was telling him something different. "Explain," he said. Alraya met his gaze. "The truth is, the warrior caste isn't natural. They were created, engineered by the real rulers of Velmera long ago. But when they became too powerful, they took over and rewrote history." Voss exhaled slowly. That was a hell of a secret to keep. Before he could respond, The platform reached the bottom. A massive door stood before them. Behind this door, Alraya whispered, is the proof that will change everything. The massive door before them hummed with energy, its surface covered in glowing alien symbols. Behind it lay the truth, the secret that could destroy the Velmeri warrior caste's rule. But there was no time to think. The assassins were coming. Voss turned, gripping the stolen energy weapon. He could hear metallic footsteps above. They were fast, too fast. The elite warriors of Velmera didn't hesitate, didn't second-guess. They only killed. Alraya pressed her palm against the door's control panel. It scanned her biometric signature, and the locks hissed open. Inside. Now. They rushed in, and the door sealed behind them, just as plasma blades pierced through the gaps, cutting deep glowing lines into the metal. They won't stop, Alraya said, breathless. They'll cut through. We have minutes at best. Voss turned his attention to the ancient chamber around them. It was nothing like the golden elegance of the palace above. The walls were made of smooth, dark metal, and strange machines pulsed with a faint blue light. At the center, a massive console flickered to life. What is this place? Voss asked. Alraya stepped forward, her hands trembling. The Vault of Kings. It holds records from before the warrior caste's rule. The truth is buried here. She placed her hands on the console. Symbols shifted, alien language reforming into something readable. Then, a holographic figure appeared, a Velmeri with no armor, no weapons, only flowing robes and piercing eyes. The figure spoke in a calm, ancient voice. If you are seeing this, then the deception has lasted far too long. Voss and Alraya listened as the recording revealed the shocking truth. Long ago, the Velmeri were not warriors. Their empire had been ruled by scholars, diplomats, and telepaths. They were one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, using intelligence, not war, to expand. But fearing external threats, their scientists created the warrior caste, a genetically engineered elite, bred for battle, programmed to obey. Stronger, faster, ruthless. Then something went wrong. The warriors grew too powerful. They saw their creators as weak and unworthy. In a single night, they overthrew the ruling class, erased history, and declared themselves the rightful rulers of Velmera. The warrior caste was never meant to lead. Alraya whispered, her voice shaking. They took power by force, and have kept my people in fear ever since. Voss absorbed the information quickly. This wasn't just a political coup. It was a total rewrite of an entire civilization's identity. Before he could respond, a loud screeching sound filled the chamber. The assassins had breached the door. Alraya turned to him. We have the proof. Now we have to survive long enough to expose it. Voss tightened his grip on the energy weapon. He had fought in impossible battles before. But this time, he wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting to bring down an empire. The heavy door shuddered as the assassins forced their way in. Plasma blades glowed red-hot, slicing through metal like it was paper. Voss didn't wait. He aimed the stolen energy weapon at the weak point in the doorframe and fired. The impact sent a powerful shockwave through the entrance, making the breach unstable. That won't hold them for long, Alraya warned. Voss turned to the vault's central console, where the ancient holograms still flickered. Can we transfer the data? Alraya's fingers danced across the interface. Yes, but it will take time. Time they didn't have. The first assassin forced his way through, his armor smoking from the damage. Without hesitation, he lunged at Voss with inhuman speed. Voss barely dodged, rolling aside as the plasma blade slashed where he had been standing. The heat sizzled through the air. Another assassin rushed forward. Voss fired, the energy blast slamming into the attacker's chest, but the warrior only staggered. Their armor was too strong for a single shot. Damn it, Voss muttered. The second assassin swung a blade toward Alraya. She raised her hands, her glowing markings pulsing. A sudden wave of psychic force slammed into the attacker, sending him crashing into the wall. Voss used the distraction to grab an energy blade from the fallen assassin's belt. He activated it, the crackling blue edge humming with power. "Let's see how you like it," he growled. The lead assassin charged. Voss met the attack head-on, parrying the plasma blade with his own. Sparks flew as they clashed, each strike sending shockwaves through the room. But the Velmeri warrior was faster, stronger. Voss barely managed to block a deadly strike aimed at his throat. His arms shook from the impact. The assassin kicked him hard in the chest, sending him crashing into the console. Voss gasped for breath as the warrior loomed over him, blade raised for the final strike. Then, a sudden pulse of light erupted from the console. The ancient archive activated fully, sending a massive energy surge through the chamber. Holograms of the past flashed everywhere, revealing the truth of Velmera's history. The assassins froze. For the first time, they hesitated. They saw who they really were, not rulers, not rightful kings, but engineered soldiers designed to serve. Alraya took the chance. She pressed one last command, and the data uploaded to the Velmeri planetary network. "It's done," she shouted. "The truth is out." The assassins staggered, their minds reeling from the revelations. Voss seized the moment. He drove his blade into the lead assassin's chest. The warrior fell without a sound. Alraya grabbed his hand. "We need to leave. Now." Voss nodded. The battle wasn't over yet. But the Empire had just been shaken to its core. Voss and Alraya sprinted through the dark corridors beneath the palace. The Vault of Kings had revealed the truth, and now the entire planet knew it. The Velmeri warrior caste's greatest secret was exposed. But that also meant the real war had just begun. Behind them, alarms blared. The assassins weren't dead, only momentarily stunned by the shocking truth. Soon, they would regain control, and when they did, they would hunt Voss and Alraya to the ends of the planet. "This way." Alraya pointed to a narrow passage. "It leads to the outer jungle." Voss didn't question her. He followed, gripping the stolen energy blade tightly. He had no idea what awaited them outside, but one thing was certain. They couldn't stop moving. As they ran, Voss saw flashes of blue light from Alraya's glowing markings. She was exhausted, using too much of her psychic abilities in too short a time. "How much longer can you keep that up?" Voss asked. Alraya forced a weak smile. "Long enough, I hope." They reached a final security door. Alraya pressed her palm against the panel, and with a hiss, it slid open. A burst of cool jungle air hit them. Outside, the Velmeri capital stretched beneath the palace, its towering spires bathed in chaos. Holographic screens flickered across the city, displaying the truth from the Vault of Kings. Velmeri civilians stood in the streets, watching in disbelief. Some fell to their knees in shock. Others cried out in anger, realizing they had been lied to for centuries. Then the real danger appeared. Warrior caste enforcers flooded the streets, their black armor gleaming under the city lights. They weren't confused like the assassins. They had one mission: silence the truth. "They're rounding up civilians," Voss muttered, watching as soldiers forced crowds into containment zones. Alraya's hands trembled. "They're trying to control the damage. If they erase the truth now, the Empire can still survive." Voss's eyes narrowed. "Not if we stop them." A deep rumbling sound echoed from the palace above. Voss looked up, and his stomach dropped. A massive warship was descending from the sky, its weapons locking onto the capital. Alraya's face paled. "No, they wouldn't." Voss gritted his teeth. They would. The warrior caste wasn't just trying to control the truth. They were trying to destroy it completely. If they couldn't suppress the truth, they would bury it in blood. Alraya turned to him, desperation in her eyes. "We need to get to the broadcast center. If we can override the central comms, we can warn the entire planet before they wipe everything out." Voss nodded. "Then we move. Fast." As the warship's cannons charged, they ran. The battle for Velmera's future had begun. The ground rumbled violently as the warship descended, its cannons glowing with deadly energy. If Voss and Alraya didn't stop the warrior caste soon, the entire capital would be reduced to ashes. Faster, Voss urged as they sprinted through the jungle outskirts. The broadcast center was their only hope. If they could take control of the planetary comms, they could send an emergency signal to every Velmeri citizen before the warrior caste silenced the truth forever. But getting there was easier said than done. A squad of heavily armed enforcers stood between them and the entrance. Their black armor gleamed, and their plasma rifles were already raised and ready. Voss dove behind a fallen tree, pulling Alraya down with him, just as a barrage of energy blasts ripped through the air. "Any brilliant plans, Princess?" he asked. Alraya's breathing was heavy. I don't know if I can fight again." Her glowing markings flickered weakly. She had used too much of her psychic abilities already. Voss gritted his teeth. He couldn't rely on her powers this time. It was up to him. He checked the stolen energy weapon, low on charge. The plasma blade was still functional, but he couldn't take on a squad alone. Then he spotted something. A cargo transport hovering nearby, likely abandoned when the chaos began. An idea formed. A risky, reckless idea. "I need you to trust me," he said, gripping her hand. Alraya blinked in surprise. "What are you?" Before she could finish, Voss pulled her up and sprinted toward the transport. The enforcers opened fire, but Voss zigzagged, dodging each blast by inches. He reached the transport and vaulted onto the side, slamming his fist into the control panel. The engine hummed to life just as the enforcers closed in. "Hold on," Voss shouted. Alraya barely had time to grab onto him before he sent the transport into full speed, crashing it straight into the enforcers. The warriors scattered, diving out of the way as the massive transport plowed through their ranks. Those who didn't move fast enough were slammed aside. The moment they were past the blockade, Voss jumped off, rolling as the transport crashed into a nearby building. Alraya landed beside him, gasping. That was insane. Voss grinned, and it worked. The broadcast center's doors loomed before them. No more enforcers stood in their way, for now. They rushed inside, making their way to the main control room. Alraya ran to the terminal, her fingers flying over the controls. Almost there. Voss turned toward the entrance, gripping his plasma blade. He could hear the enforcers regrouping outside. They had one shot at this. As the first enemy stormed through the door, Alraya activated the broadcast. The entire planet was about to hear the truth, whether the warrior caste liked it or not. The broadcast center hummed to life, its massive signal towers sending Alraya's message across the entire planet. Every screen, every comm device, and every public display in Velmera flashed with the truth. The holograms of the Vault of Kings appeared, showing the hidden history of the Velmeri people. Images of the scholars, diplomats, and true rulers filled the air, followed by the horrifying revelation of how the warrior caste had stolen power centuries ago. In the streets below, Velmeri civilians gasped in shock. Some collapsed in disbelief. Others shouted in rage. The lie that had controlled their lives for generations was falling apart. But the warrior caste wasn't done fighting. The moment Alraya finished uploading the message, the doors to the control room exploded inward. A squad of elite enforcers stormed in, their plasma rifles aimed. Voss didn't hesitate. He charged forward, slashing his energy blade at the first attacker. The enforcer barely had time to react before Voss's weapon sliced through his armor, sending him crashing to the ground. Another soldier fired. Voss dodged, the plasma blast burning past his shoulder. He spun, grabbing the fallen enforcer's rifle, and returned fire. The energy shot struck the second attacker in the chest, sending him flying backward. But there were too many. 3 more enforcers rushed in, weapons blazing. Voss ducked behind a console, shielding Alraya. "You need to finish the transmission," he shouted, It's still uploading, Alraya yelled, desperately typing commands into the system. We just need one more minute. A minute was a long time in a fight. Voss gritted his teeth. He had to hold the line. The lead enforcer lunged at him, swinging a crackling plasma axe. Voss barely managed to block with his blade, but the impact sent him staggering backward. The enforcer pressed forward, slamming him against the wall. Voss grunted in pain. The warrior's strength was inhuman. His armor was too strong. Voss couldn't break through it. Then, suddenly, the enforcer stopped moving. His weapon dropped from his hand. His entire body froze in place. Voss gasped for air and turned to see Alraya standing behind him, her markings glowing brighter than ever. Her voice echoed with power. You will not take this from my people again. With a final burst of psychic energy, she sent a shockwave through the enforcers' minds. They collapsed, their bodies twitching, their consciousness overwhelmed. The room fell silent. Voss looked at her, stunned. I thought you said you were too weak to fight. Alraya swayed, barely standing. I was, but I couldn't let them win. A soft beep sounded from the console. The upload was complete. The truth was now unstoppable. But outside, the warship was preparing to fire, and they still had to escape before the city was destroyed. The ground trembled as the warship in the sky charged its cannons. In moments, the entire city would be reduced to nothing. Voss grabbed Alraya before she could collapse. We need to move. Alraya's breathing was ragged, her glowing markings flickering weakly. She had used too much power, but there was no time to rest. They ran toward the exit as the warship's shadow loomed over the city. Outside, the capital was in chaos. Thousands of Velmeri civilians had seen the truth. Some were fighting back, attacking warrior-cased soldiers with whatever they could find. Others were running for their lives, trying to escape before the destruction began. A massive explosion rocked the city as the warship fired its first shot. A section of the palace erupted in flames, sending debris raining down. Voss shielded Alraya as burning metal crashed into the street nearby. The warrior caste was going all in. If they couldn't rule Velmera, they would destroy it. Alraya's eyes widened in horror. They would rather burn our people than lose power. Voss scanned the area. They needed a way out. Fast. Then he spotted it, a dock for planetary shuttles, just beyond the city's main plaza. That's our ride, he said, pulling Alraya forward. The problem? The plaza was swarming with enforcers. Velmeri rebels were fighting back, but they were outgunned. The enforcers were pushing through, trying to silence the uprising before it could spread. We'll never make it through, Alraya said, shaking her head. Voss's jaw tightened. We have to. A nearby explosion sent a patrol vehicle flipping through the air, crashing into a column. Civilians screamed as the battle raged around them. Then an idea hit Voss. He pointed at a hover truck filled with fuel cells. If we can blow that up, it'll cause a distraction big enough to get through. Alraya looked at him, hesitating. That could kill people. Voss's expression darkened. If we don't act now, millions will die. She clenched her fists, then nodded. Do it. Voss grabbed a fallen enforcer's rifle, took careful aim, and fired. The energy blast hit the truck's fuel cells, and a second later, the entire plaza was engulfed in fire and smoke. The explosion knocked over buildings, sent enforcers flying, and caused mass panic. Now, Voss shouted. They sprinted through the chaos, weaving between panicked crowds and fallen soldiers. Plasma blasts whizzed past them, but the enforcers were too disoriented to stop them. They'd reached the shuttle dock, just as the warship's main cannon finished charging. A blinding light filled the sky. The final blast was coming. Voss and Alraya leaped into a shuttle. Voss punched the controls, and the engines roared to life. As they shot into the sky, the warship fired. The city below vanished in fire. The shuttle shot through the sky, barely escaping the massive explosion below. Voss gripped the controls tightly, his knuckles white as he pushed the engines to their limit. Behind them, the Velmeri capital was gone, reduced to burning ruins by the warrior caste's warship. Fire and smoke filled the horizon, and the once great city was now nothing more than ash and rubble. Alraya stared at the destruction, her eyes shining with unshed tears. So many lives lost. Voss exhaled heavily. We did everything we could. Alraya clenched her fists. No, this is not the end. She turned to the shuttle's comm system. The broadcast was still active. The truth had already spread across the planet. Every remaining Velmeri had seen the lies of the warrior caste, and now, even as their capital burned, they would not forget. A sudden beep from the scanner made Voss tense. Enemy fighters were approaching. They're not done yet, he muttered, adjusting course. We need to get off-world. Alraya shook her head. No, we need to fight. Voss gave her a sharp look. Are you crazy? We're in a tiny shuttle against a fleet. Alraya placed her hands on the control panel, her markings glowing faintly. The people have seen the truth, but they need a symbol, a reason to rise. If we run, they might lose hope. Voss glanced at the scanner. More ships were taking off from the surface. Velmeri rebels, citizens who had seen the truth and were refusing to surrender. The planet was fighting back. Voss grinned. All right, princess. Let's give them a war. He spun the shuttle around, heading straight for the nearest enemy fighter. Plasma fire streaked past them, but Voss dodged expertly, weaving between blasts. He lined up a shot and fired, his blast hitting an enemy fighter's engine. The ship exploded in a ball of fire. Alraya tapped into the comm system, her voice strong and clear. To all Velmeri, now is the time to rise. The warrior caste tried to erase us, but they have failed. We are more than their rule, more than their lies. Fight for your future. Across the planet, thousands of voices answered. Rebel ships launched into the sky. Velmeri warships, once under warrior caste control, turned against their former masters. The warship that had destroyed the capital suddenly found itself outnumbered. Velmeri forces swarmed it, blasting its shields and tearing through its defenses. Fire and explosions erupted across its hull. Voss smirked. Looks like your people made their choice. Alraya watched as the warrior caste's fleet crumbled under the weight of its own betrayal. The Velmeri Empire was free. As the final enemy warship fell in flames, Alraya turned to Voss. The fight isn't over, she said, but thanks to you, we have a chance. Voss leaned back, smirking. Yeah, then let's make it count. The rebellion had begun.